As perfect as the clock strikes 5, why don't we get started? So in my first time as chair, I'll call this meeting to order and ask for your patience. And with that, I think next is just, can we get a roll call?
Start off, Chuck Hobenick.
Oh,
Here.
I'm sorry, I thought Brenda would do it. Okay. Oh. Yeah, no.
Actually, Chair, that might be a good way to do it. Hey, Brenda, can you roll call who's on the call?
Yes, I can.
Thank you.
We're just going to go down the list in no particular order. Chuck, how do you see your last name? Hobenick?
Hobenick, yeah.
Hobenick. John Moore.
Here.
Linda Olson.
Here. Sorry, I'm going to be on the phone for a little bit, but I'm listening.
Caitlin Mercier.
Present.
Don Roth.
I'm here.
Joe Anderson.
Here.
Ty Bursky. Is that how you say it?
Bereski, here.
Okay. I believe I have everyone. Oh, and here's Jervis. Jervis Ridley.
Here. Made it.
Well timed, Jervis. Perfect. Very good. That's what I call efficiency.
Wow.
All right. Next on the agenda is just approval of the minutes from the last meeting on July 13th. Could I get a motion and then we'll open it up for discussion?
I'll move to approve the minutes as written.
Okay. All right, can I get a second?
Second.
All right, Chuck's got it. Any discussion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries. Public forum. Do we have any guests from the public tonight?
We do not.
Okay.
Wow.
Then we will move on to new business. And I will say it was kind of fun. It's one of my chair duties. I got to work with Brenda on setting an agenda. We locked it off. And then the city shut down the water a little bit later. So we have a last minute addition to it. But yeah, and if we could, it would be great to get I was afraid it's the chair. I was going to somehow get calls that I'm supposed to carry water out to every household in Inglewood. Could we get an update on our water issue?
Yes, Chair. I've actually we have a presentation. This will for the council members. This will be the same presentation that you saw last night. We'll go through it with the board and so that you all on the board can ask any further questions that you may have. So let me pull that up right now, and we'll run through. We'll run through what we have. So let me share my screen. All right. Okay, and let me slideshow. Okay, how's that look for everybody?
Yeah.
Okay, as you are all probably aware, we had an issue last week with a contamination event in the water system, and subsequently had to issue a boil water advisory. And so I'll run through, basically in this presentation, we'll just run through what happened over the course of the last week and then give you all the opportunity to ask some questions. Let me first start off by saying that Deputy Director Angela Goodman ran point on this from an operations perspective and basically from a utilities perspective from the beginning last week at this time when we started to notice there was an issue. And I can't express how exceptional of a job she did helping to manage this crisis. And And she's here tonight, and she's on vacation, and has called in because she's just that dedicated to this organization, and really is really her leadership through that crisis last week was outstanding. I was actually out of town dealing with family issues in upstate New York, and made it back by Friday. But in the intervening days, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, I was in regular communication with her and Deputy Director Steve Simon, and as well as City Manager Lewis, about steps and progress and things like that. However, the on the ground execution from a utilities perspective was led by Angela, and really just I want to commend her on the work that she did. All right, with that, we will go through what happened. So here's what we do is every month we take samples throughout the distribution system. And the distribution system actually extends beyond the city of Englewood city limits. We actually serve some areas that are outside the city of Englewood. They're part of our service area. So we take generally around 50 samples a month to test for bacteriological contamination and disinfection residual. And this is something that we have developed as part of working with CDPHE. This is a CDPHE approved plan. So we submit our proposal for where we're going to take tests. Basically what we're trying to do is we're trying to get a representative, a characteristic representative sample of the distribution system at every month to ensure that the distribution system and the water system as a whole is functioning properly. One of the things we sample for is coliforms, which is a form of bacteria. And so coliforms are bacteria that are influenced by, that are in soils influenced by animals. There's a specific coliform called E. coli, which is the one that we're talking about tonight, which is a fecal coliform, which is essentially the product of any mammalian waste. So if it comes out of the gut of a mammal. So whether it's human or deer or dogs or whatever, that it's a common bacteria, and you can see it causes intestinal problems. It can make people sick, and so we want to keep it out of the water system. The way we test for this is it's either a pass fail. It's either present or it's not. And what we do is we take a water sample at one of those sites, we let it, we send it off to a lab where it sits for 24 hours, and then there's a determination as to whether it grows within that sample. And then if it does, then it comes back as positive. Well, the way this procedure works is if it comes back positive, we then have to retest, because something that happens sometimes, it doesn't happen too often, but it does happen where you'll end up with a false positive. And that's because maybe the sampling bottle got contaminated. Maybe there was some kind of an issue with something that was in the sampling port or something like that creates a false positive, at which point we retest to ensure that we don't have a false positive. If we get a second positive test, that is what kicks in the boil advisory, and that is a requirement of the law. That's a state implemented program that we have to follow. The other thing that we test is the disinfection. So the distribution system as a whole, what keeps it free from growing bacteria and things like that is what's called a disinfection residual, which is the chlorine. So there's a certain amount of chlorine we want to keep in the distribution water all the way out to people's homes, because if there is a point in time where some kind of a bacteria gets into the water, that disinfection residual will kill that bacteria and keep the water safe. And so those are the things that we're testing for when we look out into the system. Additionally, we do a lot of testing at the Allen treatment plant. So what you see on this list are all the things that we test. We test them daily and for everything, and in some instances, we actually test these every couple hours. So these are all the things that we're continually looking at as we send water out of the water treatment plant and into the distribution system. The plant is staffed 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We have a lab on site that operators are running these samples to ensure that we are within the parameters required for us to be able to send water into the distribution system. What we had in this, what we had in the impacted area is essentially zone 1. And so what you can see is we had 35 samples taken between August 2nd and August, I'm sorry, I got to move a window here. August 2nd and August 5th. 18 of those were routine samples in zone 1, 4 additional samples at the subject property, and 6 samples at homes on either side of the subject property. Additionally, we took 7 random samples taken in zone 1. And what I failed to mention before is the sampling locations, these are houses. And so what we'll oftentimes do is we'll take it out of the hose spigot or the hose bib off the side of a house. So what we'll do is we'll run the hose bib until the water becomes the temperature that we know the distribution system water is, at which point, once we're sure that the pipes in the house have been flushed, we'll then take the sample because that should be representative of what's in the distribution system. And what you can see here is as we were going through this process, we hit one of these homes, one of these sites ended up in this, and this is in the southwest portion of our service area. One of the sites tested positive for E. coli, and the other 2 homes that we tested immediately upstream and immediately downstream tested negative. So we are able to quickly start to isolate where the issue was. So from a timeline perspective, on August 2nd, we did our normal sampling. We took 11 samples, sent them in for our monthly water quality testing. On August 3rd, we did another 11 samples. And then in about midday, we got a result back from one of the samples on August 2nd that was positive for total coliform and E. coli. We immediately contacted CDPHE because we wanted to make sure that the state was aware of what the potential issue we had, and we were working with them because we wanted to make sure that we were following every rule, law, and regulation that we were supposed to as we started to navigate this emergency. We took samples upstream and downstream of the subject property, and we took a second sample at the subject property. And again, that second sample is to confirm or not confirm whether there was a sampling error. Most times, almost all the time, this is a sampling error. And so initially we were thinking, okay, there must have been some kind of a sampling error at this location. Well, on Wednesday, August 4th, we got the results from the samples on the 3rd, and there was a second positive at the same location for E. coli and total coliform. So once we hit a second positive at that same location, that same home, we have to issue the boil water order. Again, we tested upstream and downstream, which they were both negative. So we were quickly able to start to narrow in that it was something to do with this sample site. When we first started, we weren't sure if this was something in the larger distribution system or what this issue was or how extensive it was. All of our remaining samples throughout the distribution system were negative. We continued our communication with CDPHE, issued the automatic boil water notice, and provided, and that is a directive out of the Clean Water Act, which is promulgated by the EPA, and then ultimately primacy is given to the state to implement it. Additionally, on August 4th, we worked with Tri-County Health in Arapahoe County, worked with Arapahoe County Emergency Management to issue the boil advisory, which was sent at 5:13 p.m., and then mobilize an incident command system. We set up an emergency water distribution center at Civic Center for impacted individuals. We did a citywide call center to take customer calls. There were 600 plus calls in the first hour and a half. A lot of that had to do with the notification that came from the county was much more widespread than was originally anticipated. Instead of going to about the 25,000 customers in zone 1, it went to about 300,000 customers in the Southwest metro area. So we ended up fielding a lot of calls from other people in other districts who were confused by the notice that they were potentially needing to boil their water. We had a map that was immediately set up that correlated addresses to the website, so that someone who was working the call center, if someone were to call in, they got a live person. The live person checked their address against the map, and then it would say one way, yes, you're in the zone, or no, you're not in the zone. And then we initiated our media and public outreach. Well, as we were investigating, upon the second sample, we continued our investigation of the sample site and tried to figure out what was causing this problem. And essentially what was discovered was, what you'll see in the center picture, was there's a meter pit. And within that meter pit, you can see there's standing water, and that standing water tested positive for chlorine, which is a sign that there's a leak. So it's a sign that there's something coming from the distribution system or that service line into that meter pit. And so that allowed us to immediately start to hone in on what we thought was potentially the potential cause of the issue. We instituted some flushing to try and flush out the distribution system in case it was more widespread than this location. And then we also immediately initialized the meter replacement process to replace this leaking assembly. We also took a third sample, because if this wasn't the issue and we were able to show a negative sample because some other thing resolved itself, then we would have been able to lift the boil order. On Thursday, August 5th, we got the results from the 4 samples. At this point in time, we were negative for E. coli, which is progress, but not enough progress. We were still positive for total coliform, which means we had to continue the boil water advisory. All the other samples, again, were negative. Incident command system was still up and running, the water distribution, the call center, and a number of social media comments, responses. And then we were in constant communication with CDPHE, Tri-County Health, and Arapahoe County. On Thursday, August 5th, you can see the pictures. Staff went out there, fixed the leak, replaced the meter pit, all new assembly, and then took an additional sample at that point in time. We also took additional random samples, again, because we're trying to characterize what's going on, and we think we've got the issue. We think we've identified the issue. However, we want to make sure that if we haven't identified the issue, that we're still gathering data in case this isn't the issue. By Friday, August 6th, we got the results back for the subject property. Again, the same exact sampling location, and it came back negative. And so that was excellent news. We were able to immediately lift the boil advisory at 11:45. So the boil advisory was in place for about 42.5 hours. Again, continued working with CDPHE through this whole process. We did a reverse 911 to residents. We provided updated instructions on the website. We notified media. We did social media posts. We did electronic message boards, and we also reached out to major employers and the Chamber of Commerce directly, because the system that was used originally to, pardon me for a second, the system that was used to notify that it was called an iPause system. The county did not have confidence that a further notification would have been contained to the area that we wanted, and they wanted to use it for only life emergency types of notification. And since this was lifting the boil order, it wasn't what it was initially, which was instituting the boil order. It was more of a notification that you didn't have to. And so their lack of trust in the system is why we ended up choosing these other approaches. The incident command system was still in place. Call center was still open, and we still continued the water distribution. We understand that this caused a number of impacts to our residents and businesses, from cooking and providing drinking water. It was more time consuming, it was more energy, it was hot. So when you're when you're boiling water inside, and if you don't have air conditioning, you turn it on the oven, it just creates more heat in an already hot period of the year. And then, for anybody who has children, who they're trying to bathe the children, it becomes more difficult for them in that respect. For businesses, any business that had food and beverage consumption had to purchase water and boil water continuously. Places like Grow and Gather and grocery stores had to dispose of portions of their inventory. We did get one anecdotal report of a business temporarily closing, and any type of business that uses a water and ice dispenser had to be temporarily discontinued, which is definitely an impact to our businesses throughout the city. So some of the numbers, the incident command system had 26 staff members. You can see that it's organized by the NIMS. It's a FEMA approach. I can't, National Incident Management System, NIMS. Met 7 times during the event to set the objectives, track progress, keep the council informed, and all those reports are available. The City of Englewood employees really stepped up, and it was actually one of the more humbling things that I've seen is just how the city staff rallied around this community to want to help serve the residents and serve the community in the event of this crisis. And so 100+ employees staffing the call center, distributing water. We also had extensive water sampling through utilities, and then that rapid meter pit replacement from our utilities crews. Some of the customer service, we had 1,271 logged calls, 49 employees volunteered to answer. The distribution center, we had 3,000+ gallons distributed. That's bottled water and some bulk water. 45 employees volunteered to help staff that. And we also provided delivery directly to elderly and the disabled. One of the things that we wanted to make sure through this process is that we're transparent. And so there were dozens of social media posts on all the platforms. We had 252,271 views of the specific web notice relative to the boil order. The communications department responded to over 800 comments on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Nextdoor. Social media, you can see how many news feeds, 213,000 engagements, 20,000. We had a number of press releases. Angela did a number of interviews with the media throughout the event. And then we also made a couple videos. One was Angela doing a video during the crisis, and then there was a video at the end of the crisis that was City Manager Lewis and myself to notify the community that it was over. So what we don't ever want this to happen. We don't ever want it to happen again. We didn't want it to happen this first time. I think the thing to keep in mind is this is actually it sometimes doesn't seem like it, but this is actually the monitoring system working because there was a localized contamination event, and our protocols to sample, which are what we develop in coordination with CDPHE and are consistent with what other water providers also have to do across the country, highlighted and identified an issue, which then triggered a defined response that really the crux of that response is to protect public health and to protect our citizens. And that's why we issued the order the way we did. Some of the things that we're looking at as it relates to helping our customers at least ease the burden slightly is a credit for all customers for 1,000 gallons of water usage. And so it's a low number, it's $3.42 per customer account, but that gives you an idea of how inexpensive municipal safe drinking water is. It's at $1,000, it's as 1,000 gallons, it's $3.42. If you think about going to the convenience store and buying a bottle of water, they're $1.99 for a liter. And so we're talking about 1,000 gallons. So that we want to issue that credit. The issue with an E. coli contamination is it could potentially impact water filters. So we're setting up a program so that if anybody in zone 1 had to replace their filters, so if it's a reverse osmosis, full home system or a refrigerator filter, things like that, that residents can submit a receipt and submit a request for reimbursement of that cost. We are making a more concerted effort of inspecting all of our city's sampling sites, 70 plus sites, to assess the current and to assess the current sampling plan. We have some ideas on this. It's one of those things that I think that it's a legacy thing of this utility that we still do a lot of these samplings through the home. And so what that introduces is a variable of the actual home into this equation. And a lot of utilities, and I think this is something that we are going to accelerate, is a lot of utilities get away from that utilization of the home and set up actual sampling locations throughout the distribution system so that we can truly get representative samples of how the distribution system is functioning outside the influence of an individual home. And so we're working at that right now in terms of first and foremost, assessing to make sure that we don't have another one of these lurking issues out there. And secondly, over the next several months, getting to the point where we can shift this from the legacy way of doing it through homes to doing it in a more controlled fashion that allows us to really assess the distribution system. We have a vacant position that we're going to repurpose to a regulatory compliance position, and we should be posting that for that position this week. This is something that, in my role at South Platte Renew, I have an entire division that's associated with regulatory compliance. It's my data and regulatory compliance division. And on the utility side, this is completely decentralized. So there's a number of individual people who are handling various permit requirements and regulatory requirements. However, it's not centralized. It's not well coordinated. And I think in this instance, we are already heading down this path. And the reason we are heading down this path is if you got the consumer confidence report this year, you saw that we had a tier 3 violation for not documenting an alternative tank inspection procedure. So it's not that we're not doing the tank inspections, it's that we didn't document that we got an approved alternative method for it. So it's really just documenting that the state said, yep, you can go forward with the way you're doing it, continue to do it that way. We just never documented that. So that results in a violation. There's another one that we're working with the state on right now, which is our backflow. You may have heard about this. This is our backflow and cross connection program. And what that one essentially is, it's for industrial and commercial properties that have large backflow devices. They are required to have them tested and then submit those testing results to us at the city, where we will compile the results. And what we need to achieve every year is an 80% compliance with that testing. So this is the commercial property does the testing and then self-reports the results, and then we as an agency need to ensure that there's at least 80% compliance with that requirement from the community. In this instance, one of the challenges that we had was the program was all hard copy. It was all handwritten forms, and tragically, the person who was administering this passed away suddenly last year. And so we were left without any understanding of how far along we were or what the needs were. And so we've been working to digitize this process, completely review and ensure that we are in a place where we have a system in place so that if anybody leaves, it doesn't just all the knowledge doesn't disappear. I think this is a theme from my 16 months of being utilities director, that a lot of the issues that we face there are just not proactive procedures for executing on programmatic approaches to the needs of the utility. And so it was really for many years that the system works. It was just a very reactive, here's an issue, we go address it. Here's an issue, we go address it, as opposed to having comprehensive programs to address these issues ahead of time and get ahead of them. I think you see that with the deferred maintenance and all the capital investment. You'll see more of that in the budget presentation. But really, this is the challenge right now is getting ahead of a number of these types of issues. And so the last thing is the meter pit inspection staff. Am I still on? Okay.
You are. Someone just had their sound undone.
Okay, perfect. And then ultimately we'll look at compiling an after action report, and so that we can really review what happened and make steps to, again, ensure that something like this never happens again. I want to reiterate that there was nothing wrong with the plant. There was nothing wrong with the water coming out of the plant. We really were able to figure out that this was a very localized issue in that one small little area. But out of the abundance of caution and by law and through protection of public health being the priority, when we're in the unknown phase of this, we have to assume the worst, and that's why the boil order was issued. With that, I will open it up for any questions that anybody might have. I'm going to stop sharing. Chair, would you like me to field the questions?
Yeah, I was trying to see the hands, but
Okay.
yeah, whoever, please go ahead.
Okay. First, I see Brenda, you have your hand up. Is there a procedural question or?
Yeah, we just have a member from the public on the call, and I wanted to welcome them to the call.
Okay.
Ms. Natasha Weaver.
Okay. I also see that Councilmember Wink has also joined. So I think we have everybody here for the committee.
Correct.
Okay. I believe Ty's hand was up first.
Yes, thank you for the presentation. I just have two quick questions. So from your presentation, I was a bit confused. So did the incident occur because of a failed service line, or was it because there was an issue with the meter or on Englewood infrastructure side of things? And then the second part of that is, did the homeowner at that sampling site notice anything before the test results, such as, you know, water pressure issues or higher bills or anything that could have helped us to identify this a little sooner?
So I'll start with the second one first. The occupant in the home was an elderly woman, and she had no issues. There was no symptoms. There was nothing that would indicate that there was anything wrong at the home. With the first one, it was something within that meter pit assembly. We haven't been able to pinpoint where the leak actually was on that assembly. So it could have either been on either the upstream part of the service line, the downstream part of the service line, or something within the meter itself. So I think at that point in time, what we did is we just replaced everything because we wanted to make sure that we had a clean new version of everything in that location. So we were characterizing it as the meter pit assembly to include those parts of the service line that are adjacent to the meter itself, but really weren't clearly able to pinpoint exactly what was causing the leak. We just know there was a leak. And what we think happened was we opened up the hose spigot and it draws water through the service line. And so we draw a lot of water through because we want to get it to the point where it's pulling the distribution system water. When you do that, every one of the samples had a really good chlorine residual in it. And chlorine residuals require contact time in order to kill the bacteria. And so what we theorize is that we were pulling it through the home and out that hose bib. It didn't give any of the water that was potentially being sucked in from that leak in the meter pit. It didn't give enough time between that point to when we were collecting the sample for the disinfection this disinfection residual to neutralize the bacteriological contamination there. That's what distribution systems are designed on, is a chlorine residual. So if there is any kind of influence coming from external into the system, because every water system across the US leaks. And so the disinfection residual is there so that if any kind of contaminant gets in, it's able to neutralize that, but that takes it takes contact time to do that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Board Member Ridley.
Just quickly, if you're going to set up, move away from the legacy way and set up systems where you do the testing from, does that not then eliminate the wonderful process of having caught this the way you did?
What it does is well, within that is the other bullet, which is the meter inspection protocol. Right now, the way we inspect meters is if there's a we inspect when the transmitter dies. So those transmitters have batteries, and when they die, we have to go replace them. So there's a work order, we replace it, and then we inspect the meter pit at that point in time.
All right.
We don't believe that that's as programmatic as we want to do that to prevent exactly this kind of issue, especially if we take the houses out of the equation. From a regulatory perspective, we need to show that the distribution system is sound, and that's where we're trying to eliminate that variable from this equation. At the same time, by adding the inspection protocol, which takes resources, we think we're able to protect our customers better as well.
Sounds good. I think everything you did was great. I only had one issue. I don't know why. I haven't checked my home phone, but I don't know why I didn't receive an alert, and I was out of state. And I think I got about 20, maybe 30 phone calls and texts from people in Inglewood and North Littleton wanting to know what was going on. And because I didn't know, I was totally at a loss, but I was able to go to the website and check it out and then lead them to that. So
yeah, and I think that would be right. If you were out of state, what it does is it looks at the cell towers and looks at all the cell phones within. And if you were outside that geo fence of the cell towers, even though you live here, you wouldn't have gotten you should not have gotten the notice.
I just got a ton of texts and phone calls, and that was okay because I knew where to go on the website to look for stuff and then direct them to it. But I was wondering why I didn't actually get one. But I was in Virginia, so okay.
Yeah, that would be why.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. Board Member Mercier.
As far as the reverse 911 calls, that's only for landlines, right? Typically, because
that's correct, and that was one of the discussion points. Was we sent this broad notification to all these people for cell phone lines, and then we were talking about the county said, well, we can't use that again because they don't trust it. And so we looked at our options and we said reverse 911, but that exact issue came up, was that only goes to landlines. And so you miss all the cell phones.
okay, just wanted to make sure because I was periodically checking social media to make sure or to see when the FOIA advisory was lifted. And then I had another question and now it's gone. So I'll ask you if I remember it.
Okay. Board Member Boreski again.
Yeah, one quick thing you mentioned, you were thinking about updating the processes for some of the meter pit inspections. Have you has anyone at the utility thought about pairing that with some machine learning or AI to more quickly monitor whether or not we're seeing fluctuations from baselines at the meter? Is that something that's feasible?
I think that's a longer term approach. I think really, the ultimate goal is to get to automated meter infrastructure, which is AMI, and that's basically where you get real time meter information that a consumer can pull up their meter information on a web interface. We are several years away from that because we still have non-metered service lines, and so we're initially trying to just address the 1,220 flat rate meters to get to AMR, which is that the remote read with the trucks going by. I think once we're setting that up so that we can progressively get to an AMI approach, but AMI costs a significant amount of money. It is in the master plan. It is in the longer term plan. It's not in the 5-year window right now because we just have bigger priorities. Ultimately, the goal is to build towards exactly what you're talking about, which is utilization, data utilization, and technologies to help get more real-time understanding of what's going on in the system. I know another thing that our staff is looking into is there's technology around leak monitoring that we can utilize within the distribution system. So we are investigating that independently, but that's more targeted towards the distribution system as a whole. But it is definitely something that, we're balancing trying to get some of these basic legacy things taken care of with progressing forward with advancements and doing that all at the same time while still maintaining a system that our customers should have complete confidence in. And if anything, this process illustrated how well the system actually did function in the end, both the physical system and then the regulatory system to protect human health.
Thank you.
Board Member Mercier again.
So I remembered the question. Will the credit be on our bill? Like, will we be able to see that we've been credited back money?
That's our plan, is to have it show up as a credit on the bill.
Okay. And then another question that I don't recall you answering, is there any way for you to be able to determine how long that leak was happening?
There really isn't. And one of the concerns is, did it backfeed into the distribution system? And again, that's where the contact time from the chlorine residual is what's so important here. We'd be more concerned if there was not a chlorine residual, because that would show that something's consuming the chlorine to the point where the disinfection is now gone. But in this case, we had really strong chlorine residuals. So any amount of contact that small amount of bacteria would have made with the distribution system water would have been through the contact time would have been neutralized. But it's hard to say right now how long that was occurring.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I saw Mayor Olson, I saw you had your hand up at one point.
I made a mistake. I don't know how I did that. I just saw it, so I took it down.
Very good. Well, Peter, thank you for that thorough update. That was actually really helpful to get all the background on it. Looking at the time, should we try to squeeze in the budget?
Yeah, I can run through that fairly quickly. It's a review of it's really a review of everything you've already seen. It's just one more look at it before we push it forward to council and then move through the approval process through the fall. All right, I'm going to start with the water budget. So, and I will go through this fairly quickly since it is all things that you have seen. I got to share my screen first. Water, there we go. Okay, review of what we've talked about through the course of the summer as it relates to our budget priorities. You can see here the budget numbers as they are right now, and what we've added is the percent change. A couple of the key things to look at are the personnel changes. So this is what we came out of the master plan, which is ramping up staffing to support the programs that we're trying to initiate. I think the one potential change that we'll see between this budget and potentially what ultimately goes to council is the addition of a fourth FTE this year. We have not determined this yet, but this is a possibility of a fourth FTE in our meters division to help accomplish what we're planning for in terms of that stronger inspection program. This is something that, based on our financial planning, we can absorb in the financial plan. It just means we have to defer a little bit of priority as it relates to capital, but in the grand scheme of things, it's not that significant of an impact. Additionally, commodities went up. That's just a function of increasing prices, and capital is our big one. So you can see in 2021, it was 7.7 million. It's going up to 10.8. Here's the issue on that is it's an optimistic approach to try and execute that much capital in a year. Part of that requires ramping up the engineering division in order to execute on those projects. And so projects take a long time from a starting point to the point when you get to construction. Construction is where we spend the money. And so while we're showing 10.8 million, if we can get to that level of execution, that would be outstanding. If not, basically what it does is it just rolls over. It doesn't disappear, it just stays in the fund balance. So you can see the numbers there. So the total budget is 22.8 million. Here are the priorities. We've talked about taste, odor, and hardness as a priority. Staffing, I think that speaks for itself. Lead service lines. One of the areas with lead service lines that we're looking at, a couple things. One is ARPA funding, which is the Recovery Act funding, is utilizing some of that to address lead service lines. So that's additional influx of funding. We were notified that the Hickenlooper, one of our priorities, we went through Hickenlooper's office to potentially get an earmark for $2 million of funding for lead service lines as well. And that's moving forward. We have not gotten approved for it, but at least it's made it through the first round of approval and is being something that's being forwarded to the bill. We also have the infrastructure bill that's in discussion in Congress. So I think lead service lines, we're looking at potential influx of federal funding to help support that as well. Metering is a priority. Converting our flat rate customers to metered service, that is something that we need to do for this utility. And I think we got a little bit derailed with this most recent event to prioritize more of an existing infrastructure inspection, characterization, but in parallel, we'll be converting those flat rate customers. Asset management, obviously, that continued investment, water resource resiliency and quality, and then our SCADA systems and our electronic controls at our water plant. Here's how they all align. You can take a look at this, but it's predominantly infrastructure because we're an infrastructure-based department. The revenue, we're anticipating a 4.5% increase. And again, that keeps with the annual increase, generally set at 4.5%, to make sure that we don't get behind in terms of just the increasing costs and the increasing need for investment. What does that really look like? It's about $1.05 a month on a typical residential bill. We do not have a capital investment fee increase for 2022. The next increase on that would be $1 in 2023, and we propose that next year. Water connection fee follows the engineering news record index, which is 2.7. The cost for staffing and consultants, we need to just to continue to ensure execution on these programmatic approaches to things. We need those. We need that type of funding to come in, and then ultimately we're looking at additional resources. We're following through on the WIFIA program. We actually had an interview today with S&P for our credit rating. It went very well, and so we're hopeful to get that rating, I believe, by the 18th for the water fund and the sewer fund, which we will then include with our application, which is due August 31st. For WIFIA funding, and that will help give us some low interest federal loans to really start to attack this backlog of issues. And I already talked about the other funding. Here's what it looks like in terms of revenue, what percent generates in terms of total revenue. You can see 4.5% on water rates is $278,000. Personnel requests, we have a water operations superintendent. That's a person at the water plant at a superintendent level. Right now, I utilize that position, that FTE, for a need this year, and so we're reprogramming that superintendent. An INC manager, that's our integration and controls. That's someone who can really start to manage this updating and changing things to being more automated. And then an engineer one, and that's to help support execution of capital. Cost requests, you can see these are just some of the programmatic cost requests. I think something that we'll add into this is the water meter inspection or replacement approach. So a more concerted and more aggressive approach to that based on this most recent issue. Any of the other things that we talked about, we'll probably try to actually get done this year. So the change of sampling and institution of sampling sites we'll try and accomplish this year, but we might have some of that next year. You can see what it looks like from a increases perspective. It's about an increase of 418,000. And then we have the utility billing system, which we expect to be implemented by April of next year. This is a capital list you've all seen. You can see the areas of programmatic investment. They align with what we've talked about. And I will open it up to turn it back over to the chair for any questions.
Do we have any questions? There we go. Don't see any hands raised.
Okay, I will move on to the sewer fund if that works.
Perfect.
Okay, let me do another share here. It takes me longer to share this than it does to actually do the presentation. Uh-oh. Okay, there we go. I hit the wrong button. Apologize for that. Let me share a screen. And where did my sewer fund go? Are you aren't seeing that, are you? Shoot, I'm not
No,
seeing what.
we are not.
Okay. For some reason, it's not coming up.
Peter, I can share. Do you want me to?
Let me try one more time. Oh, there it is. All right. For some reason, it disappeared. Okay. Apologize for that. Let me get this slideshow going. Okay. Sewer fund, again, we'll go through it fairly quickly. This is what it looks like from 2021 to 2022. It's only in total a 4.4% increase, and a lot of that is because we've stabilized the plan as it relates to execution of capital investment at South Platte Renew. You can see our decrease is actually on personnel, and that's because we're including a vacancy savings. We generally run under our total FTE allotment at SPR, and that's by design to ensure that if we don't just rehire the position if someone leaves. We evaluate what's the right use of what's the right need and potentially repurpose positions. So sometimes I'll hold a position for 6 or 12 months to determine, and we'll have a new need. Perfect example of this is we've realized in the last few months that we are water experts. We are not natural gas production facility experts. And so what we've really been honing in on is a strategy to bring someone in from the outside, hire an employee who can run our biogas system, who comes out of the oil and gas industry, not someone who comes out of the water industry. So that's something that we're in the process of developing a couple, an operations person, an engineer person to help manage that third part of our process that's brand new. But you can see there's a reduction there. Capital expenses is our biggest increase, and that's because of just the ongoing execution of the capital plan. Priorities are staffing. we're utilizing in-house resources, and then we're also supplementing that with the appropriate contractual. So we're trying to find the blend of the right in-house versus contractual resources in order to execute programmatically. Again, this is all programmatic. So what you can see in the picture is a lining program. So inspection of our collection system, and then determining the prioritization of areas of this clay pipe that needs to be lined if it's damaged or has inflow. Asset management is a continued approach to how we prioritize our investment in our infrastructure, and then South Platte Renew funding is really the bulk of the expense in the sewer fund. You can see that here where it splits, it's infrastructure and sustainability. Revenues, again, 4.5% increase. This follows along with the financial plan that we put together. It's a 10-year financial plan that projects these rates into the future. Typical bill increase is about $1.10. What we don't have in the budget, but we're still working on, is the connector district multiplier of 1.05 to 1.2. Really where this would impact us is when we next year's round of billing of our connector districts begins in June. Our goal is to get this through this year. However, with this most recent issue with our meter issue in the boil, we're still tracking towards that. However, we're also focusing on these new priorities that have come up. And again, it's the ENR cost index for connection fees. Staffing and consultants are what we're utilizing to ensure that we get the revenues that we need. And you can see it's the same sources for additional funding. You can see what the revenues generate. The 4.5% creates a much bigger number here because that gets extended to all the connector districts, and then the connector district multiplier. If we are able to get from 1.05 to 1.2, that's an additional $2.2 million of revenue into the sewer fund, which will help us address the unfunded capital needs that we have, and then potentially further help to stabilize rate increases into the future. Right now, that 2.2 is not reflected in the budget because we have not finalized that number. The reason why the engineer number is so low is because we anticipate only 10% of that FTE doing sewer related. The bulk of their work would be water related. You can see how that looks from a ongoing versus one time. The reason the Cogsdale number is so big is because the billing system bills every account in the connector district. So it's a much larger billing area. I believe it's an additional 35,000 accounts that we have that we bill on behalf of those connector districts. You see basically our capital is collection system improvements. It's that lining and manhole lining program. And then it's the 50% share of SPR capital projects of 7.7 million. The other 7.7 million comes from Littleton, and that funds the total capital need. And that is sewer, which goes a little bit faster.
Do we have any questions for Peter? All right. I think at this point, I'd like to entertain a motion to recommend that City Council approve by ordinance the proposed water and sewer enterprise fund budgets for 2022. Can I get such a motion?
I move.
All right, so moved. Can I get a second?
Second.
All right,
Yeah.
Chuck, thank you. Any further discussion? All right, then all in favor? Aye.
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 I,
Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, thank you. I don't believe we have any old business tonight. Is there any further staff choice?
We do not have anything else.
Is there anything from the board before we wrap? All right, well, very good. Well, with
I
that,
actually
oh,
I had my hand up, but I don't know if it's showing. Maybe not.
I
Anyway,
couldn't
it's hard
see
to
it.
see.
Thank you.
I just wanted to say publicly to Peter and his staff, Brenda, everybody that was involved with the staff. It just did a tremendous job. It's a very, very difficult week for them all. And there's a lot of fallout from it. We're gonna have to rebuild trust in all of our residents with the process who don't understand it. And I think the notification thing is probably the worst kind of deal with this, of just not getting back to the people when we did rescind, and how difficult that was. And I still have emails, I'm sure, Travis, did she leave already?
No, I'm
Oh,
still
you're there.
here.
I see her now. I mean, you got lots of contact because people knew you were on the water and sewer board, I'm sure, your neighborhood or whatever, and just multiply that by, a lot of other people calling in. So there's a lot of rebuilding of trust, but I cannot tell you how thankful I am for the work that they did. And so I just needed to say that publicly. And also, Peter had just a smashing successful staff presentation for our annual report for the South Platte Renew to all parties with Littleton and Englewood the last week of July. It was a tremendous 2-hour presentation with really great information. Just a very professional group of people that we're lucky to have. So we'll have to weather this all together going forward, and hopefully the continued communication will be strong. I think it will be. But I just wanted to thank you again, Peter, and the rest of your folks.
Well, thank you. And like you said, the credit goes to my staff. It's really the team that we've been building both at South Platte Renew I'm hitting my 3-year anniversary this week. And so it's really starting to, it's starting to develop in terms of what we've been building. And then on the utility side, with Angela, Sarah, and Steve on board as the deputy directors and leading their areas, it is a remarkable difference. And I've talked to staff about, if this happened in the first 2 months of when I took over as utilities director, it would have been a far different issue, because we just didn't have the systems or the organization in place to really respond. So it's unfortunate that it happened. And at the same time, we have the organization in development to the point where I think we're getting close to being at a point where we can really address these things more proactively. But thank you, Mary. I appreciate it.
And I can say I'm coming up on my 12th anniversary in this kind of stuff with you all. And this is the best team I've seen assembled to handle it as well. So kudos to you all. We're very privileged to have you all on board.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Brenda, and then Councilmember Wink after that.
I just wanted to mention a reminder that there's a Celebrate Inglewood event coming up on the 28th of August. And we are going to have a tent at that location. So everyone on this board is more than welcome to join us.
Thank you. Councilmember Wink.
Thank you, Chair Moore. I often send Peter private emails telling him how pleased and proud and grateful I am for his work and effort and his teams. And so I think, not to just follow what Linda said, but I want to also say it for the public to hear that, I mean, it's, the work you're doing on a day-to-day basis is above and beyond what you need to be doing. And our citizens need to realize that. And hopefully one day we'll get to a point where more people understand just that high level of that quality of work you bring to our city. And you're very humble and you thank your staff. Your staff is pretty tremendous as well. Angela, Steve, and Sarah. Angela, you were really in the weeds this time with it. So you probably all were. But I appreciate your humility, Peter, and want to still say that the leader here is you, and that all of what the culture of utilities and wastewater renewal in Englewood and Littleton is, all the greatness does come from the guy at the top. So leadership is hard. You're up there taking the heat for everything. So thank you, Peter.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I do appreciate it. Thank you.
Good. Any other final comments or questions?
Chair, I didn't know if we wanted to, since we do have a member of the public, if they wanted to speak. I know that they came after our public forum period, but I didn't know if it was appropriate to maybe offer that ability.
Sure, we could do that. Ms. Weaver, anything you'd like to say? Otherwise, it's certainly fine.
No, I don't have anything to add, but thank you so much for all the information. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us tonight. Well, with that, I think we can call this meeting adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Thank
Thank
you.
you,
Thank you,
everybody.
everyone.
Great night.
Have a great month. Bye.
Bye. See you, Angela.